everybody, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Today, joining with me is no one. I'm leading the episode today because as we got closer to the draft, we decided we had to split it up and try and hurry. The draft is only 4 days away now. It's getting really close. So today is episode 9 of season 2, and it is the safeties. So I'm going to start by going over what the Steelers have at this position. And so far, by what it looks like, this group is one of the Steelers' more solid positions, which apparently confuses a lot of analysts as they think safety is a high priority need for the Steelers, to which I struggle to understand. Anyhow, first up, the Steelers have Mike Mitchell, who really picked up in the second half of last year. Had he not, this position might have been higher on the draft wish list, but Mitchell is a solid starter, and I expect him to be so for the next 2 years. He really brings toughness to the Steelers' defense, in my opinion. So next up is second-year starter Sean Davis. Sean Davis performed wonderfully once he got into the starting role about 6 games in, and deservingly won the Steelers Rookie of the Year award. He has a bright future ahead of him and should be a Steeler for a long time. After the starters, the Steelers have Robert Golden as well as Jordan Dangerfield. Both of these guys, to me, are solid backups. Golden has tons of experience since he has been a starter for a while, and he did alright, but ultimately got replaced by Davis. Still a solid backup. Dangerfield is pretty good too. If I remember correctly, he had to step in for the earlier Chiefs game last season, and he did really well taking on the starting role. So I really think the Steelers have solid depth at this position. After those guys, however, it's just a bunch of practice squad guys. So let's talk about losses at this position. This one is actually just a projected loss because he's actually still a free agent, so there's a chance he comes back. But Shamarko Thomas. Thomas really isn't the biggest loss in the world. He was big on special teams, but he really didn't see playing time with the starting defense ever. It's more of a hit to special teams than it is to Steelers' safety depth, in my opinion. So I think the Steelers will survive. So, is safety position a free agency need? The simple answer is that it wasn't a free agency need whatsoever. I can't think of a reason the Steelers really need a safety other than to replace Marco's spot on special teams. And that doesn't have to be a safety to replace that. It could be a linebacker. It could be really anything. It's just that would be the only spot that I could think of that we need a safety. Moving on is I want to talk about if it's a need in the draft. On a scale from 1 to 10 of how important the position is to address, it's currently at a 2. It is the position that I believe needs to be addressed the least, tied with tackle. And I like who the Steelers have both. I like who the Steelers have both starters and backups, and see no reason to draft a safety this year. But anyway, I'm gonna go into draft prospects. I want to say instead of picking late rounders like I would have hoped, I actually picked guys that the Steelers brought in. This in total for pre-draft visits. Now that they're over, the Steelers brought in 4. The only one I left off was Obi Manafalu. I think I butchered that, but I did all the other 3. So let me start first with Monte Nicholson. He is from Michigan State, and what's good about him is he's a good combination of height, speed, and weight for his position. He has a feel for route combination and plays coverage accordingly, and he shows a hustle towards anticipated passing lanes once he figures out where the pattern is going. He makes long strides and has some range over the top, and coaches expect him to do well at explosion drills, which he did not participate in at the combine. Finally, he takes false steps and performs very well in cover 2 shell specifically. So what's bad about him is his toughness on the field does not match his size, which is it's a shame, but it is what it is. That could easily be improved. He often ducks his head into tackles and doesn't square up his targets consistently enough. He doesn't show his will as a hitter often enough either, and he takes too long to get his hips and feet moving in rhythm when asked to mirror route breaks. He has personally said he has confidence issues and looks unsure of his responsibilities at times, sometimes losing track of deep coverage. And finally, he has just 8 passes defense over the last 2 seasons, which is a meager amount, so to speak. So overall, Nicholson probably came into the draft a little too early because of his tape in college was rather meh at best. He's going to struggle staying in the NFL if he doesn't find more confidence and aggressiveness. Because of this, Nicholson is projected to go somewhere between rounds 3 and 4. So moving right along, I'm going to go to the next prospect that the Steelers brought in, and that is Josh Jones from NC State. Similar to Nicholson, Josh Jones also has a good combination of size and speed. His acceleration and speed are good enough to range all over the field. His athletic ability and reactive quickness are both above average, and he has shown that he can disguise his coverage before sprinting back to center field. He has versatility as a safety because he has played both safety spots, and he is fluid in his movement and has an explosive jump when going up for the ball. He carefully watches the quarterback's intentions almost all the time, looking to make that big play. He has fantastic closing burst, and he is extremely aggressive and has bouncy feet where he can't wait to fire downhill and just hit something. He has the ability to accelerate through the collision. Then finally, he does a good job of punching and playing off of blockers. So what's bad about him is while his aggression is good at times, it's also a double-edged sword. He's had times where he came in too hot looking to lay a big hit and then ended up missing his mark completely as a tackler. While playing in zone, he can be a little slow to both anticipate routes and squeeze through the throwing windows. And another double-edged sword is that sometimes he focuses on the quarterback too much and loses track of his assignments. Then finally, he has shown that he bites on play action bait and can get drawn out of position relatively easily. So overall, the funny thing about Josh Jones is that he reminds me of Mike Mitchell, and I wrote this before I actually saw it, but NFL Network analyst actually said his NFL comparison is Mike Mitchell. So, but yeah, he reminds me of Mike Mitchell, and his downfalls, the part where he misses tackles trying to lay the big hit, had me thinking of Mike Mitchell from early on last season. Obviously, Mitchell is a big hitter on the Steelers. He tries to get those big jarring hits, and it did result in him missing tackles like the one against Zeke last year. But anyway, back to Jones. Jones is projected as a second or third rounder. However, in Chad Reuter's 7-round mock draft, he had him going in the first round to none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So just keep that in mind. Final prospect is Budda Baker from Washington. One of Baker's best qualities is his enthusiasm and explosiveness in his play. He's a former high school track sprinter with good speed and can come screaming off the edge as a blitzer. He is constantly playing on the balls of his feet, just waiting to race the action on a dead sprint. His backpedal and diagonal shuffle are really smooth, and his agility and shiftiness allows him to mirror changes of direction in space. He has above average instincts from all and any coverage area and has a good play recognition, and he combines that with following the quarterback's eyes to maneuver himself around the field. He has the quick twitch and close ability of a cornerback in coverage, and his ball skills are above average, and he plays with exceptional aggression to try and go up and get it. Similar to Josh Jones, Baker can accelerate through receivers to jar the pass loose. Baker makes it a point to finish the tackle by racing to the throw to end the play at the catch point. Then finally, scouts have described Baker as a winner and as having a top-notch personality. So he is a good locker room guy and a leader waiting to happen. So some concerns about Baker. As a safety, he is undersized at 5'10" and 190 pounds, and has a smaller frame, so he could struggle to carry 200 pounds as a pro. His also possibly limit how NFL teams use him when I apologize. How NFL teams use him. Then next up, when they're playing the slot, tight ends tend to tower over him. He sometimes aggressively shoulder rolls into running backs, which could cause future health issues. His force as a tackler is just average when going against bigger running backs. He has gotten forced into grab and drag scenarios to get running backs down. He has a small hesitation to accelerate when forced to open and sprint downfield. Sometimes he gets a little overzealous when stepping downhill to tackle. And then finally, he may need to play with a little more discipline and control as an NFL tackler to be successful. So overall, Baker has excellent football knowledge and experience that will hopefully allow him to have a great career despite being in a smaller frame. But because of that smaller frame, it's keeping him out of the first round, and he has been projected somewhere between the second and third rounds. So let's talk about prospects and how I rank them. I'm going to do two lists, which is actually different from normal, because I want one list to reflect what I want and one list to reflect how good they are. So if I had to rank the prospects based on who I want the Steelers to draft, number one is Monte Nicholson. Uh, I am a huge believer that the Steelers should not address this position at all in the draft, but it has to be someone. I'd want it to be the latest guy possible. I want it to be someone that's going to be taken in the later rounds. Monte Nicholson, even though it's projected relatively high, I believe rounds 2 to 4, he would, if the Steelers do plan on taking a safety, I'd want it to be him. Even though personally, if we're gonna take one, I'd want it to be taken in the 7th or 6th. So next up is actually Budda Baker. I have a soft spot for great locker room halves. I might not reflect it all the time because it depends on how good a player is too. But just to put it into some context, I like guys that will stick around. And I feel like if you're not a good locker room guy, you're not going to be a Steeler for long. You're going to move around. I think of guys like Aqib Talib, who's just generally been back and forth of how good a guy is. I think of wide receiver Brandon Marshall. They've both moved around, and they're just been known to be bad locker room halves. Like, I don't want that on the Steelers, so that is why Josh Jones comes in last. Where Josh Jones probably has the most upside because of it. His frame and size are great. I listed him as last, but only because he's he's not he wasn't listed as a great locker room half. That doesn't mean he's not, but Budda Baker is specifically known as a top-notch guy, winning mentality. So uh, I would still Josh Jones. I have nothing against that guy. So now if I had to rank them on when they'll come off the board by who's the best, number one is Josh Jones. I do think Josh Jones is probably uh, considered the best out of this group. I do consider him a little better than Budda Baker, and his ceiling is probably higher because of his stature. So he already has an advantage. Then next up is Budda, who I think has the next best set of skills, and then third up is Monte Nicholson, who doesn't really have all that experience yet. I think he needed some more. I don't think he should have left college this early, but he has upside. That is what's good about him. Monte Nicholson has upside. So, I think that's going to bring us to a close here today. Any questions about the show, please email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear feedback. Also, check us out on Twitter at stronger_steel. And on Facebook, you can find us at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. We post our podcast on both SoundCloud and YouTube, so please be sure to check them out. All right, Steeler Nation, have a great day and go Steelers.